What is up, diehards? Wes Monell in the building for AWOL Sports. Drew Lacuesta in the house. Thanks for hanging out with us. This is a 2020 NFL season preview, our projections for every division, first through last with records. When we look at the schedule, if we give one team a win, we cross-reference that by giving the other team a loss. So we keep track here. That's how it should go, and that's how we roll. Looking at the NFC West, San Francisco went from 4 wins to 13 last season and had the lead in the Super Bowl. Seattle made the postseason 7 of the last 8 years, winning a playoff game last season. The Rams missed the playoffs and are only 2 years removed from a Super Bowl appearance. Arizona rolled out a new head coach quarterback duo, and they look to build upon 5 wins. The 49ers have one of my favorite coaches in the game in Kyle Shanahan. Been a fan since 2005, so I've enjoyed watching his journey. I got to be honest, there's not a lot of offensive players that I actually trust aside from George Kittle. How can I trust Trent Williams after sitting out last year, and he's played 15 games 3 times in 8 years? Defensively, there are 3 players that I trust: Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, and D Ford. PFF tells me that the other guys weren't great individually. Look, I love Richard Sherman, and he had a tremendous season and career. I kind of think it was his last hurrah. The Seahawks, Cardinals, and Rams all have good receivers. I know I'm painting a picture that has them coming back down to earth. I still have them making the playoffs as a wild card, still with an 11-5 impressive record. I just think there are questions to be answered here. I might be on the high side, to be honest. I wouldn't favor them in a playoff game because of their inexperience, because of their individuals. I trust the collective unit. I trust Kyle Shanahan, George Kittle, and a few of those defenders. Overall, though, a lot of these guys, this is a make or break season for their careers. Drew, I see 10-6 is your prediction, and you also have them in the postseason.
Yeah, coming down a little bit from 13-3, 10-6 is what I have them at. They're going to take over as the 5 seed. I do have Seattle taking the number 1 position in this division. I like Kyle Shanahan too, and especially their defensive coordinator Robert Saleh. They're both back. NFL. As far as the NFL, they've ranked 4th in offensive yards. Obviously, a great rushing team, 2nd in points. On the defensive side, also 2nd in total yards allowed. Also, 1st against the pass and 8th in points allowed. So, I mean, both sides of the ball, they make it happen. Jimmy G, he was top 12 in pass yards. He actually had the 7th best quarterback rating. Now, a lot of that I know does tail and piggyback off of Kyle Shanahan's genius. I know a lot of it is moving the pocket and getting receivers open. His scheme is great. I don't know how many times we see Kittle catch and run wide open, either on the sidelines or in the middle of the field, or running backs run through the line of scrimmage without getting touched. So, I mean, this guy can make it happen with almost anyone. They had a 20-10 lead on Kansas City in the Super Bowl. Under 3 minutes left in the third quarter. They just couldn't close the deal. Patrick Mahomes made some great plays, and unfortunately, they couldn't take home the trophy. This year, they're starting off with a little bit of an injury to Deebo Sam. He's probably not going to play this week. Brandon Ayuk, their number 1 wide receiver that they are happy to take, is questionable also. They had Emmanuel Sanders on the team last year, and still we saw Garoppolo struggle a little bit. They were kind of saying Garoppolo struggles throwing outside the numbers. They were trying to throw him in a box, throw him inside the numbers, and that's where he throws picks. So there might be a little bit of a blueprint for San Francisco on the downtrend. They've lost a running back to Miami. Seems like they still have 2 viable backs who did pretty well on the yard per carry average last year. We're talking Tevin Coleman and Mostert. But, I mean, 2 guys to repeat a season just like they did last year, who knows if that's going to happen? Who knows if people are catching on to the scheme? I guess it's just kind of a wait and see. They lost to Forrest Buckner. They drafted this kid, Javon Kinlaw. Javon Kinlaw is a great story. He did drop down in the draft a little bit of character issues, but his one of the cool things on his draft profile is that he always keeps fighting. He was homeless before. A great story. Never gave up. Went to junior college first, and then was an all-star at South Carolina. A lot of these draft scouts are calling him the most violent defensive player they've ever seen come out of college. So that could be a good replacement for Buckner alongside of Bosa and Armstead. But I mean, they were pretty susceptible to some big chunk yardage too on the ground. With that front seven, for them to be giving up a lot of chunk yardage versus the run, we don't know if that's going to be a blueprint to take advantage of on the defensive side too. So they have a pretty tough schedule. Outside of the Rams and the Seahawks in their division they have to fight against, they do have other people coming to town. Philly, I have Philly taking the number 1 seed. Green Bay's coming to town. Buffalo's hard-nosed defense is coming to town. And then they have to travel to the Patriots, to the Saints, and then to Dallas's high-powered offense. So I don't know if they could run this back again. I do have them in the playoffs just because I believe in the coaching and I believe in some of the veterans and playmakers they have as a unit on this team. I just don't know if that receiving core is going to hold up if they're forced to take it to a shootout. Is Jimmy G good enough with these young receivers that haven't proven they can lead an offense to keep Jimmy G in the top 12 for passing yards? We're just going to have to wait and see. But I do have them coming down to earth a little bit with 3 less wins.
Yeah, we both do. And San Fran, you touched on it. They're at home weeks 4, 5, and 6. That there's a chance right there to get ahead. I know it's tough with the Eagles there, but then you have the Dolphins and then another challenge in the Rams, but those are 3 home games. And later in consecutive weeks, they have the Seahawks, Packers, Saints. I mean, we're going to find out what the San Francisco 49ers are made of with the target now as the team that won the NFC last year. Going to another team that is used to being a target, the Seattle Seahawks. We both have them making the postseason for the 3rd year in a row. We actually have them winning the division, slight edge over the Niners. If Russell Wilson is ever going to win MVP in his career, this could be his best opportunity. Tyler Lockett had the 2nd best catch percentage in all of football. I think DK Metcalf is going to be a monster for years. They added Greg Olsen just in case Will Disley isn't the same guy after injury. I mean, I like Disley. I know you do too, and I think he showed us some Mark Andrews-like flashes. Running back Chris Carson had hip surgery in the offseason. If that flares up, they were smart. They went out and got a 1,000-yard back in Carlos Hyde. It was actually the first 1,000-yard season of his career. I don't think too highly of the defense. Thing is, they forced the 3rd most turnovers last season and traded for Jamal Adams. I don't like that they don't have Jadeveon Clowney nor a replacement pass rusher. And the highest sack total for anybody last season on the Seahawks was 4 by Rasheem Green. But hey, Adams, he's a stud, arguably the best safety in the league, and he has a skill set to contribute to at least applying pressures and getting hurries, if not getting sacks. So he can help them out up there. It's just not what – I don't love that. And here's what I know. Russell Wilson running the offense with a D that gets him the ball back, that's been the recipe for success. I have Seattle at 11-5, and I think you do too.
Exactly. Seattle 11-5. They're going to take the number 2 seed for the playoffs, right under the Eagles. You know how much I love Russell Wilson, man. Dangerous Wilson. He just keeps getting better and better. He continues to overcome adversity. His O-line was ranked 27th. And since 2012, he's faced pressure on 42% of his dropbacks. That's the most in the NFL.
Wow.
They're definitely a running team. And they weren't really top of the league in pass attempts. Obviously, they're trying to keep that control and let Russell win them the game in the end. But they had 31 touchdowns. So 3rd and 5, they were actually tied for 1st in allowing sacks. We talked about them allowing sacks. It was 48 with Kyler and Matty Ice. So they definitely got to clean that up a little bit. I mean, it's all predicated on the run. So it's really up to these running backs, Carson, Hyde now, and Penny, if he can stay healthy, was also a high pick for them before. We still haven't seen what he can do for his potential. But everything's predicated on the run game. If they can't get that run game going, those pocket movement plays, those bootleg plays that Russell loves getting out of the pocket, they're not going to work. And obviously, Russell's very, very skilled at not taking hits, but how long is that going to last? I think he's smart enough to play within the confines of the offense. I think he's smart enough not to take hits and get injured. They were actually giving up 25 points a game. The league worst last year was 29 points a game. So they're not used to giving up that much points with the history of the Legion of Boom. No playoff teams matched or let up more than 19 points last year. So they got to fix that defense. They were the only ones above the 19-point defensive threshold. If the offense was balanced in the first half of every game, I think Russ would go into more halftimes with the lead. And when Russ goes into the halftime with lead, he's 57-0 if it's 4 points or more. I think they can do that if they can just hand him the offense, at least keep it balanced, or let him let loose a little bit, take that 4-point or more lead into halftime. I mean, his record's going to speak for himself. He was sixth in pass yards. As much as we talk about them being a running team, he still finished number 6 in pass yards. He had the 5th best quarterback rating. Obviously, a great rushing team. They finished 4th on the rushing list. Yes, they do lose Jadeveon Clowney. Obviously, we talked about him being an elite player. That's going to hurt him big time because as great of a pass rusher he was even better against the run. Super physical. They do bring Bruce Irvin back, so that's a little bit better, adding depth to the defense, but definitely not a replacement per se for Clowney. They drafted Darrell Taylor, they added another pass rusher from Tennessee, and we talked about Jamal Adams. He can make an impact at the line of scrimmage, in the pocket, pressuring quarterbacks, and definitely in the open field, make tackles, covering tight ends. So I think that's going to be huge. Another thing that I don't hear too many people talking about is they actually added Quentin Dunbar, too, from the Redskins. Dunbar was actually on Pro Football Talk rated as the second best corner last year in coverage and allowing pass catches. So Dunbar might make a statement. Again, if he repeats his performance, they added Philip Dorsett, a decent receiver for depth. We talked about Greg Olsen. I know you guys were laughing when I had him on my fantasy team. Not to say he's going to be the best fantasy tight end, but this guy's always a touchdown threat. We love Disley. He can make it happen. But I think Greg Olsen is just another big body that Russell can use in the red zone, in those bootleg opposite plays. And then Carlos Hyde, just in case Penny can't stay healthy, just in case Carson can't recover from that hip injury. All good things. Russ is 10-8 in this division, obviously one of the tougher divisions in the NFL. He's 4-2 against San Francisco. He has a losing record against my Rams, but he does have another 4-2 winning record against Arizona. Honestly, if you look at the schedule, since they fare pretty evenly with San Francisco, they only really have a few tough games on their schedule. Home games, they got Patriots. I think that's winnable. They got Dallas coming home, and then they got Minnesota at home also. The away games that they have are at Philly, at Buffalo, and Atlanta. Atlanta is probably a toss-up. I think they're favored in that game actually by 3. And then Buffalo and Philly is going to be definitely a trench match. So I think Seattle definitely makes a strong push. I like how Russell Wilson always seems to make it happen. Now with the emergence of DK's rookie year, like you mentioned, the kid's a beast, and I think he's a great compliment for one of the most underrated receivers in the league, Tyler Lockett. This offense looks like it's trending upwards, but at the same time, I think defensively they are too.
Yeah, and Seattle, you touched on their schedule. They have an early bye in week 6, and I'm not a fan of that. Not that they can control that. I'm just not a fan. I'm not a fan of early buys, and they have a week 6 bye along with the Patriots, Raiders, and Saints. I look at the schedule. it's a winnable schedule with a steady diet of toss-up games. But when it's a toss-up, you usually like the odds in favor of Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll. So they do catch both New York teams and Washington late to either distance themselves or claw back into the playoff picture. Wherever they find themselves in that situation, there's a breath of fresh air right there near the end of this slate. Probably something we'll save for another conversation, but I actually don't think Russell Wilson can be that guy to throw 550-plus passes a season. I think there's a reason he's always below that mark, besides perhaps once in his career. But you know what? With Chris Carson's uncertainty with the hip, with Carlos Hyde, I know I mentioned that he had his first 1,000-yard season of his career, so he seems like he's still productive. But you just don't know if Carson's out, if Hyde isn't the same with his legs, that O-line isn't great, we might be forced to see Russell Wilson sling the ball all over the yard, Rashad Penny starting on the PUP list. So just some things to think about when you see how the Seahawks season unfolds. That might be a possibility. And, everyone wants to see Russell Wilson go through that. I have my doubts, but doesn't mean I don't think he's not an elite quarterback. Of course I do. Moving on to the Rams. They hired a first-time defensive coordinator that coaches – he coached outside linebackers for the Bears and the Broncos. So he's a Vic Fangio guy. He'll get to work with former first-round pick Leonard Floyd again, along with 2 mid-round picks and an undrafted linebacker in a 3-4 defense. Aaron Donald, come on now. He's as good as they've ever come up front. Michael Brockers, I think he needs to step up his game. Jalen Ramsey, he gets the contract extension before the season starts, and Troy Hill on the other corner, he showed some promise. The safety tandem of Taylor Rapp and John Johnson, man, they're expected to take the next step, to take a leap. I see what the Rams see. It's just time for them to gel. So I see a lot of uncertainty, though, when you look at the Rams defensively, aside from their star players, Donald and Ramsey. But I do see the flashes. But I just feel at this point in time defensively, they're probably too reliant on those impact players making those impact plays. As for the offense, Sean McVay, upper echelon play caller. Jared Goff, he can make all the throws, but they haven't had a solid O-line since their Super Bowl year. That matters. Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, both 1,000-yard receivers. Tyler Higbee shined the last 5 games of the season. They went skill positions in the second round with Cam Akers and Van Jefferson. I know they were in the top third for scoring and forced turnovers, but that resulted in 9-7 and missing the playoff picture. I see the exact same thing coming to fruition here. It sounds like you're right there too, putting them at 8-8.
Yep, 8-8, third in the division. A little heartbreaking, man. You said it, taking 2 skill players, and it's not like I don't like these skill players. I do like Cam Akers. I think he was very productive. I think he'll fit nicely in his scheme. Van Jefferson seems to be making all the noise in camp. And Jalen is actually taking him under his wing and kind of teaching him what the defensive reads. So I think Jalen sees a star in the making too. But offense wasn't our problem. Our offensive line definitely needed to improve. Now, I will give them that unit on the offensive line was actually number 1 in letting up sacks. So Goff was clean. Jersey was clean all year. The only thing that we're missing, we don't lack in the passing game, but we definitely lack in the run game. And at the same time, it complements both sides. So most of that was from the quick pass game and Goff's ability to sense pressure. They just weren't so great run blocking. We lost Roger Saffold to Tennessee. He was one of the most physical run blocking guards in the league. We also lost our center, John Sullivan, and then Blythe on the right guard. He missed 7 games last year. Out of all of those misses, we never replaced any of them. Now, Goff was still third in pass yards, but again, McVay, a brilliant play caller, a brilliant play designer, and some great playmakers on offense. How long does that last? We saw them finish top three in pass yards last year, and we didn't make the playoffs. So something's got to change. I think we should have focused inside out, getting more help so that Aaron Donald isn't doubled all the time. We expected Brockers, who was actually a first round pick, to blow up, but he hasn't gotten there yet. So it's definitely his time to make a statement, or we've got to replace him. Now it's easier to obviously to replace defensive players in the draft. Offensively, it's a little bit harder. Luckily, Van Jefferson is making some noise. It's just not what this offense should be predicated on. When Todd Gurley was in the mix, he was the leading factor of this offense. You're talking 2 times most touchdowns produced and most yards, all purpose. Catching the ball, running the ball, that is what got us to the Super Bowl. That's what the recipe is to succeed. And I don't see them doing that. We lost Todd Gurley, great talent, but from what I saw, legs might be spent. They bring in Cam Akers. We lost Brandon Cooks. They bring in Van Jefferson. But not just that, we also lost Dante Fowler. He was our second best sack leader, super, super talented. And we lost one of our better corners too, in Nickel Roby-Coleman. I know you talked about Troy Hill. He had a high rating too on PFF and Pro Football Talk as one of the top 25 corners. We've seen a lot of corners go 1 year and then come back to earth too. So I don't know if Jalen's going to be holding it down half the field on his own again, but this is too much, man. I want to see good things for the Rams. I just don't think they've built enough beef to hang with the Niners, to hang with the Seahawks. And the only good thing I see is that I do like Goff as a quarterback. I don't think the offense will miss a beat scoring. I think in those situational plays on third down, short yardage, in the red zone, we're definitely going to struggle with that lack of beef on the offensive and defensive line. Luckily, Sean McVay is one of the best coaches on the road, 72% win rate on the road. So we're not going to be terrible, but we're definitely not making the playoffs.
72% is ridiculous.
Yes, sir.
Hey, if the Rams can get through their challenging schedule, because it only looks like there's 4 clear-cut favorites for them in those games. If they can get through their schedule, 3 of their last 4 are at home. And if they can make that happen, they'll be a tough out in the playoffs. Going to the Arizona Cardinals, who traded for DeAndre Hopkins, drafted Isaiah Simmons in the first round, extended Budda Baker, re-signed Kenyon Drake, signed linebackers Devontae Campbell, and Devon Kennard. It sounds like a lot. And they had a bounce-back year from Jordan Hicks, linebacker they signed last year. They added some veterans to the right side of the line for some stability. Kelvin Beachum, J.R. Sweezy. That's a lot of new for the Arizona Cardinals in a short off season. But I like it. But it's new. Kyler Murray, he looks like he has it to go with an elite receiving trio and a pair of backs that look more than capable. They played 10 personnel, rolling out 4 wide receivers on the field. That's D-Hop, Larry Fitzgerald, Christian Kirk, second rounder, Andy Isabella. He's the 4th guy. Some believe tight end Dan Arnold is about to take advantage and have a breakout season. Up to this point in time, he's caught 20 balls in 2 years after going undrafted. But that would be a cool story. It's a tough division where all the other teams have reached recent Super Bowls. The Cardinals, they've improved on paper. I see 8-8. On the other hand, I see you have them at 6-10.
Yeah, I like the trend with Arizona. I just don't know if it's going to be enough. Outside of already having the Niners, the Rams, and the Seahawks to deal with in their division, they still have to host Buffalo, Philly, and then they have to go at Dallas, at New England. I don't know if they're going to be favored in any of those games. I really don't think so. I'm going to guess 100% not, just because it is a new team. Now, it is a big splash trade getting D-Hop, but as much as we love fantasy football, I was watching every second of D Hop's movements. Something just wasn't the same. Now, he did pretty good balancing the targets, the yards, the touchdowns with Christian Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald, who seems to not be aging at all with that production. Right around 100 and so targets for each, right around 700 to 800 yards for each. I do like Christian Kirk. I think he's coming up to being one of the nice young receivers in this league. But I don't know if that chemistry from D Hop, from Kyler Murray to D Hop, is going to make an impact enough for them to make a playoff push. I have him at 6 wins. I do like Kyler Murray. You said it, man. He looks like he has an it quality. And for a little guy, I mean, that ball's coming out quick, and that ball's coming out tight. One of the tightest spirals I've seen in the league. Kind of reminds me of when Matt Stafford came into the league, too. A lot bigger arm than maybe what they were advertising for such a quick, shifty Kyler Murray. 20 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 64 completion rate, almost 4,000 yards, just narrowly out of the top 10. He already has 1 comeback game and 2 game-winning drives under his belt. Showed a lot of promise. I definitely like him. The only defensive highlight was they were 3rd best in allowing rushing touchdowns. That's it. But they did go heavy drafting on the defensive side. So they wanted pace. The offense definitely hit that pace. They were the 4th fastest offensive pace. They were top 10 in rushing. I think they were trying to protect Kyler a little bit. Obviously, Kyler Murray had a lot to do with them being top 10 in rushing, but they definitely allowed a lot of sacks. You talked about them bringing in some help on the O-line. Hopefully that's enough. Hopefully that gels together. Kyler struggled in the division. Obviously, it's a strong division, but he was 1-6 as a rookie last year. Obviously, there's always room for improvement, but that schedule is pretty tough. I'm not sure if they can make it happen as far as a playoff push, so I have them still at 6 wins. That's 1 win above last year, so a little of improvement there, but not so much.
Yeah, they go on the road weeks 4, 5, and 6, but the good news is then they're home the next month with a bye week. I would consider them favorites to win in weeks 2 through 5, though. Beginning of the year, they got Washington, Detroit, at Carolina, at the New York Jets. They can pile up some wins right there. If they're really taking, their team to the next level, they'll win those games. Then who knows? Maybe momentum could carry them into Dallas and pull off an upset there. It's just a tough second half slate, and I think it's a 500 ball club to me. I don't think their record will reflect their improvement because the division's tough. And the NFC is so damn competitive. So I think Arizona's improved just like you do. I just don't necessarily think this year it'll reflect in record, despite the splashy trade for DeAndre Hopkins. That'll do it for the NFC West predictions. We would love to hear what you have to say on that, on all 4 teams, how you think it'll shake out. Thanks for listening.